Hey, what's up, everybody? It is Monday, August 4th. My kids are off to school today, first day of school, so that means summer is over. Let's get back to work. We've got Matthew Wright joining us today from Spec, right? How
Good
you doing,
morning,
Matt? And Corey's out. So Matthew's covering today, and we're going to talk about
We've
EPR.
upgraded, is what we're saying. We've upgraded.
I don't know. That's a tough shoes to fill. I don't know if I'll do a good job. We'll see.
You got this.
100%. And then we've got Adam Peak. Adam, you said you went to Colorado. How you doing, man?
Great. Yeah, I went to Colorado. Back, I went through Vernal, and Vernal, Utah is actually super underrated as a city. Anyway, yeah, great story. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course, man. All right, man. So today we've got Matthew Wright, the CEO of Spec, right? And we're going to talk about how accurate spec management isn't just about production, but it's also the front line to fight these EPR non-compliance.
Evelio, before we get into that, though, I think, Matthew, can you set the record straight? Spec Wright is not named after you, even though the last name, because you could have gone with Spec WRIGHT if you really wanted to have your ego boosted, but that's not the case, correct? Because the people need to know.
Yeah, no, yeah, it's a great story. Number two, I was going to correct the fact I'm not CEO anymore. I'm chair of the board and founder. I brought in a professional CEO, Mike Boyes, who, if you haven't met him, you meet him. He's doing a great job. Separate from that, but he's got the title and he's doing a great job, and I'm helping guide the company in sustainability and some other areas. And but yeah, to your point, Adam, it's funny. It's actually my second company. I had Right Pack, which was a package manufacturing company, and that was also not after my last name. It was about making the right package the customer wanted versus what we could make. And then Spec Right actually started as the right spec because the whole concept was getting the spec right. And then it was actually one of my early partners that convinced me to make it spec right. But anyway, yeah, neither one has anything to do with my name, and I know it's hard to convince people, but if you know me,
where are you? I've got the same thing. I just I started a company called Evelio Specs, but it's not after me. Like 100%.
Matthew, what were your thoughts then on the boy band New Kids on the Block and their song "The Right Stuff"? I feel like if you had the right pack, the right specs, it stemmed from your love of NKOTB, right? Like, will you sing the song for us? That's what Laura Fody wanted us to have you do. You've got the right stuff.
I'm a big music fan of one of the best and greatest, just passing recently, one of my favorite guys of all time, Ozzy. But that's kind of my genre, Adam. I'm not quite on the new Kids on the Block side, but if you could help me, that'd be great. And also the Right Pack and Spec Right was homage to how many people ask me how to spell my last name, and it drives me insane, which is I've never spelled it RIGHT, but maybe it's out there. Somebody spells it that way.
That's fair.
Yeah. So, all right. So if you're watching, if you're listening and you've got questions on EPR, I know we've kind of talked about EPR quite a bit, but we have to, because like this is the biggest thing happening at the moment that's going to change the decision that you're making on packaging. If you've got questions, throw them in there. And also I think it's great if you let us know where you're watching and listening from. We get to reach pretty far and wide. So EPR actually impacts everyone regardless of what country you're in.
Facts, bro.
That's right. All facts, no vibes.
All facts, no cap.
But let's kick this thing off. If somebody's not managing their specifications, before we kind of get into that, like, how's it going to impact EPR? But let's back up even further. Like, what are packaging specifications?
Yeah, you think it's kind of crazy. I was just thinking when we're talking about EPR and talking about it, and people may be getting tired of it. It's fun. It's interesting. We were talking about it like it's a topic. Meaning, at some point, it's going to convert into just what we do, right? Mm-hmm. And so we're in this kind of evolution towards that. And so it's kind of this start and stop conversation that's a little wonky. But if you go back to specifications, it's data. It's a definition of data, and so it's the data you need to make the product that we're talking about. So in this case, it's packaging, right? It could be product, could be a car, a machine, whatever it is. It's data that's required to manufacture something. So if you take the package, it's obviously very important. You know the dimensioning, you know the materials, you know the graphics, if there's graphics applied to it, you know the way that you want to have that delivered. And then ultimately, you want to know its relationship with other packages and its data. And so when we talk about a specification just as a definition of data, but it's data. It's the critical data required to make things.
So, all right. So then if I've got a cardboard box, I can say it's a cardboard box. Like how
Are we going to go there, Adam, or no? We're going to go to the corrugated
cardboard of Elio.
It was day one many years ago. I was smacked in the back of the head. I told it was corrugated. So
corrugated cardboard. Yes. So all right. So if I've got a shoebox, so if I've got a shoebox, like, can I just say it's cardboard, or like how deep do I need to go in the specifications?
Well, the spec would probably say corrugated, but we would have an ability for you to call it cardboard if you wanted to. But no, it'd be into the material, you know, potentially the weight of the material, definitely the dimensioning, definitely the cutouts, the die lines, the graphic overlays that go into that. You know, ultimately, even what's packed in there. You know, we're really big in the machinery instruction today because, you know, we have the, you know, changing workforce and people that want to have just pure digital native information. So even how you pack it, what goes in there, what's the relationship of what goes in that particular box and what doesn't. And so all that, and then ultimately how it's shipped. You know, do you ship them in pallets? Do you ship them with bundles? Do you ship them stretch wear? Like, how does that all happen? And really, again, it's that digital thread of data for everybody that touches it. Because I know we're going to get into an EPRs. A lot of people touching that through the process. You got the manufacturer of the shoebox himself. You have the shoe manufacturing company, of the distributor, ultimately of the retail or e-com. And then, you know, where we're kind of headed is you have the consumer that then has to do something with that, right? So it's this whole long viral thread of information that has to be consistent and correct.
I think the thing that helped me the most as I've been following the SpecRite journey now for a number of years is I correlate it to like your income, right? So you have to file. That's going to have a whole bunch of points, right? Like maybe you're trying to get a loan, maybe you're filing your income taxes. You know, you want to know how much money you have in your bank account. You want to know how much you have to save for college for your kids. It's all coming back to the same foundational number, which is your income. And so your specs are kind of like that, because I'm sure you didn't start off this company. You know, you got the right specs, baby. I'm sure you didn't start it and think we're going to eventually solve for EPR government regulations in the US, EU, and expanding across the country, right? Like there was a different use case for it. It's evolved into like, oh, well, once we have this data, we can do all sorts of different things with it, whether it's improvement, reduction in waste, reporting to government of, you know, saving money, whatever it is. It all comes back to that one foundational point. I think you say like you'll know it, like when you get the spec right, something happens.
Yeah, the rest follows. No, it's true. Like if you think about it, just even the concept of the conversation in 2025 of what is a spec for packaging, like it's so fundamentally wrong, because that should be the start of the conversation 80, 100 years ago when a package was created. What's the spec, right? There's a long reason why not, that we really kind of voided ourselves with data, and we see that kind of everywhere where data is now the super critical element to get the efficiencies we need. AI, and I know we're going to talk about that today, but it doesn't run on napkins and file folders in your cousin's office, right? It needs this digital set, and so so it's all that stuff that's critical. And then to your point, this SpecRite and spec management just in general was not created to create sustainability solutions. This is an outcome of the data and the value of that data that we have today. And so it started just to reduce waste, which ties into sustainability, but it was really just about making mistakes, and inefficiency of people chasing data was really the foundation.
We got Corey chiming in saying he's sorry he misses this for going to the beach and just ditching us. We get it, man. We get it.
Yeah, it's fine.
Corey's important. He's much more important today. He's a big guy. He's with a great company. I was going to congratulate him on that, by the way. So
yeah, good stuff. I want to go back to this cardboard thing. No, like so like if we're looking at corrugated, we're looking at like a B flute. We've got 3 layers. You got the liner, the medium, the other liner. If we're doing like a litho label, like are we getting into that level of detail on each layer?
So that's a great question. So if you look at that, and let's just say that package, the core structure, and I'll indulge you of cardboard. I can't believe I said that word, but is there
somewhere Corey Connors and Ryan Fox are rolling over it, and they're
they thought that I would never say that word, but yeah. So that structure, just go back to the shoebox. It makes it easy. So that shoebox, there's a physical structure that sits under that litho, and so that litho may change. Maybe one version for one retailer, one for another. Or a style, a brand of a shoe. That's a relationship that should be in existence. So you have that structure. You don't duplicate that structure, but you have, say, 20 different labels that apply to that structure. You keep that data set of that box one, and then you have 20 different sub bombs that relate to that one structure. And that's good, because what's happened historically is you might have 20 different versions of the label, and somebody decides to make a change one day, and that change isn't really captured in the other 19. And that leads to a lot of problems. And it happens all day, every day. And so, yeah, it's just about this data structure and relationship. And that's what the foundation of the company is. We actually got a patent on the technology for the many-to-many relationships, which is the kind of the magic that runs under the system of doing that and keeping it not so complex. So I always remember this argument, Adam, and you guys might remember. It's like, well, I have 20 prints. Do I go by the print card or do I go by the CAD structure? It's always this debate, well, you should go by the course data, like not, you shouldn't be worried about the outcome. So
how much, so let's maybe kind of pivot here into EPR, because it's, the deadline has passed for Colorado. So now there's 2 states where the big question was, are you going to register, number 1, and then number 2, how are you going to report your data? So at SpecRite, were you starting to get a lot more kind of like panic calls as this has happened, where it's like people begin to realize like, oh, this isn't just a bluff. Like I actually have to give accurate data to these through CAA to these states. And has that ramped up or what's been going on?
And you would think, right, it would have ramped up years ago, right? But again, I think we're entering this phase of just nothing's there, so it's not really understood. Maybe it'll go away. Now we have 7 states acting totally differently, with the intent of their EPR laws, which is really complex, of what their intentions are. So what happened was we saw Oregon kind of, I wouldn't say come and go because it's still here, but the event happened, and what we're hearing now post that is, oh my God, it was a disaster. Like I thought I had it under control. I thought we could do this. Our CFO said it's no big deal. We hired a consultant, and now we're getting oh my God, I woke up the next morning and it was not good. I mean, the lift, and I've got potentially 49 more plus year, plus all this other stuff coming. Okay. Yeah. Now there's a panic. And so I think it was having to go through kind of that first, and I'm pretty comfortable that the leniency is going away. I won't go into great detail, but pretty good record that might be happening at some point. So I think that's just going to create this, and unfortunately, I think I can speak for all of us. We're all motivated by the same thing when we have to. And I think now we're at that we have to point. So it's changing motion.
It makes a ton of sense. I mean, again, I'll use kind of a weird analogy, but I remember like when the internet kind of started to come into play, right? And it was like, there was probably people who were like, I'm not really sure if this is going to stick around. And then there were some people who were like, this is the future. We have to figure this out right now. They were early adopters, not to the same extent that the internet has impacted the world. Obviously it's completely transformed so much, but the same sort of
principle will change the world.
Packaging does change the world.
It does.
But the same kind of principle, right, with EPR is like, okay, there's going to be some early adopters who they were early on with SpecRite. They got control of their data for various reasons. And then EPR comes along and it's like, well, yeah, we just have to add on to this and then report it. It's not it doesn't feel like as heavy as a lift because they were already so heavily focused on it versus other companies who were just like, who cares about our packaging data?
It's so night and day. It's interesting. We have a company that was an early adopter of Spec, right? Out of Europe, which kind of makes sense, I guess, to some degree. We can talk about Europe in a little bit, but they were honestly, they were doing stuff, 6-7 years ago that I didn't fully grasp the value, right? Like that, and they were forward enough thinking about what was coming in the world with sustainability. This is a non-discussion for them. They're so far past this conversation. They're past whatever 50 states throw at them or 43 more states throw at them. That's not even on their radar. They're thinking like 10 years out. So that's one extreme, which is very rare. And again, even ahead of some of our thoughts, it kind of pushed us. And then you have obviously the total opposite, which there's companies that have not reported for Oregon yet. I mean, that's publicly known. And so, yeah, you have and then you have 10,000 companies between those two goalposts. So it's a big variation right now of how companies are reacting to this.
It feels like reporting your data is like reporting your expenses. Right? It's like something that you've got to do, but man, you don't want to open up that Excel spreadsheet. You don't want to look for receipts. You're just like, I'll just put it in the back of my mind. I've got stuff to do. I'll do it later. Right. And what's going to happen to these brands that don't report data, that do put it off till later?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think you're going to see, first of all, the early calculations of just the initial states. It's pretty real money. I mean, I think I'd heard a couple of companies early on say, hey, we're just going to, add this as a line item. There was a large retailer 20 years ago that started charging for, sendbacks, right? And so companies just started allocating a budget towards versus fixing their issues. Now they fix their issues. So I think, unfortunately, some people are looking at that on the front side, but that's missing the whole, PR piece. I mean, this is going to be, not a great thing when lists start coming out of companies that have underreported or penalties or companies that haven't reported. So you have this monetary side, but then I think the bigger side, quite frankly, is the public. And it's not I'm trying to clear this up because this is the biggest question I get all the time with the geopolitical landscape changing in any direction, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
How does that impact this? And this is about, trash. This is about landfills. This is about inability to get rid of any more product that we are consuming. And how do we do that? And how the cost to do that? So this is not going away, and it's not kind of an emotional thought in the moment. It's a legitimate financial burden that the states are taking on to get rid of product today, or recycle it or dispose of it. And so I think with that, the states are going to really start pushing back on companies and not just monetarily. I think out the public per se.
Well, it hurts when companies don't report their data. It hurts everybody because the data is then it's misrepresented in terms of what's actually being used, and so then there are fee structures based on what is reported, which can be skewed one way or another. And to your point on landfills, I was talking to a friend of mine who used to basically run a city in Idaho. And he told me that landfill management was one of his top budget items in terms of spend. He's like, people just don't understand how much tax money goes towards city tax money goes towards managing a landfill. He's like, it's absolutely insane. And he said, if they did, he has nothing to do with EPR, by the way. It's not in the packaging industry. And he was like, but if they did, then all this EPR stuff that you've been talking about would be ratcheted up 10x and we would invest in more recycling. But it's just sort of out of sight, out of mind. Literally, It's way out of sight for a lot of these landfills. They just put them out kind of in the middle of nowhere. And you just think, I put my trash in, it goes somewhere, and that's what happens. But you don't realize the financial burden that hits a lot of these, especially smaller cities. It's pretty substantial.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I don't think any one of us, any one of us want another landfill near us, right? And so you got that whole, where people are is kind of where the landfills need to be, and the people don't want the landfills there. So you got, the environmental side, which is what's better for the earth. You got the financial side. So I think to your question before, I think the penalties are going to get harder. to deal with. And then ultimately, I think the public scrutiny is going to get harder and more important. And I also think you're losing a lot of good stories. I mean, it's interesting. I'm part of MSU's Packaging Advisory Board, and we have that collection, 100,000 samples over the last 40 years of packaging. And there has been some cool improvements made, but just kind of lost in translation of not sharing that data or not having that data thread. We were looking at a water bottle the other day. The thing looked like a tin can. It was so thick from like 20 years ago. I'm not saying water bottles are good, but they've progressed a lot towards really lightweighting. And so I think a lot of stories are lost, and hopefully this will help companies start to create those storylines of what they're doing to improve the products for the environment.
So all right, so like just kind of bringing this back to Spec, right? How can better Spec data actually lower a brand's EPR fees?
Yeah, you got two sides. So one side, and we see this in Oregon a little bit and I was talking about the states all have a little bit different vent on what they're trying to accomplish. Ultimately, it's the same core value, but they're all kind of looking at it just slightly different. And, so we got just the pure reporting side, which is I call it a taxation side. And, it's back to your example, Adam, which is like, if you make X, you don't want to reply 2X, because you're going to pay twice as many taxes as you have to, right? We wouldn't even think about doing that. And so one, it's just purely having the right data. And I think in most companies, and this is probably controversial statement, but I think most companies would actually go the other way and pay a little bit more to be safe than pay under. And so I think that a lot of there's going to be some fluff and extra fees paid that probably don't need to be paid. So by having your right data, you can hone in on exactly what your fines, penalties, taxation, whatever you want to call it is, and you can know you're not overpaying because I haven't heard of a refund system, so there might be, but you don't want to overpay or wait 3 years for IRS to figure out you overpaid and send you a check, or obviously don't want to underpay because that's attached to penalty systems. And so that's whole kind of the financial side. And then you have what Oregon's trying to do, which is, okay, it's one thing to pay the fee or fine, but now let's start working on reducing those fees or fines. And that's by doing less with product, right? And so that data, you were given a great example before about beef fluid, et cetera, or seafood. By having your data structured in a way you can search for changes or look for things that can displace or replace or lightweight products or whatever it is, change materials, that's a quick and easy thing to do when you have your data structured correctly. And then you can make these big changes and then see, obviously you're doing better for the earth, better for EPR, but you also should be reducing your fees. And that's really the Oregon kind of thought process now is let's get past paying fees and then let's start talking about paying less fees by having better product. That's all data.
So can I be on, let's say I'm on specright.com, I'm using the platform and I put in my specs. Can I swap out my specs to see how different materials would impact my fees?
There's a lot of cool tools, and even we're not talking about tariffs today. That's another complicated data structuring issue, which is the same thing. But yeah, you have a couple of tools. You have like item finder, which can search for things like it, so you can see what's being done somewhere else with your product structure. So that's one thing. Then you have spec compare, which you can compare multiple specs. It's kind of like if you go onto any sort of platform on the web and you're looking to buy a washer or dryer, and you get 5 options, from 5 different retailers. It's the same concept. Here's 5 different versions of this package. And then to your question, run that through, in this conversation, an EPR calculator or an LCA in that regard, and can see the difference impacts and kind of remove the, opinions about what's better and really look at factually what's better. And so, yeah, no, it's really cool. And what I like to use the tool for is if a company is going to create a new product, is it better than what they're doing today, and compare that. Or if you have a vendor come to you with some new alternative products, and remember a BOM has multiple layering. So back to the shoebox, it could just be you have a different structure, but the labels stay the same, the other stuff stay the same. What does that do for your overall picture? Not just that one thing, but does it really impact positively, that total BOM or that total product? So yeah, that's part of the cool part of having your data set structured that way. To your point, Adam, was like, now it's all the fun of the analytics on top of it and business outcomes.
Yeah, I mean, I rarely do this, but I'll give Avelio credit for that question.
Thanks. Avelio is always right.
Avellio is always right. There was one company, Matthew, to your point, that I know is on Spec, right? And they had reached out to me and said they ran a calculation on their labels, and they were using, it was like a 2.6 mil or a 2.4 mil label, and if they went to a 1.8 mil BOP label, so just same liner, same print, just changing their spec down, it was like a 30% reduction in weight on their labels. And because of the quantity of labels they were using, it was like the price went down, the amount of labels they put on a roll went down.
Adam's using
what?
You're cut out there for a second.
Oh, I'm sorry. Am I back? Hello?
Yes.
You are back.
Okay, sorry. I don't know where I cut out there, but
you got off at the 30% reduction.
Okay, so the 30% reduction in their label thickness and the weight was a cost reduction, an efficiency increase, and then the EPR fees dropped as well for Oregon. And it's a large CPG company, right? Like labels aren't a big part of this, but for them, it was like, they can do this. That would normally be a really heavy lift for a company to then go back and change thousands of SKUs. And because they were on Spec right, and that many to many thing you're talking about, it was like, yep, let's just make the change, after testing and obviously that stuff. But they made the change. They could reduce everything, and that, I think, it was a huge win for it was a big financial win for a really low lift with making that update.
Yeah, and I think every CPG, food bev company is all looking for points. 1 point, 2 points. It's not. That's the world we live in, right? So all those little changes add up, both from sustainability and cost. I was going to use an analogy also for the consumer. We're not there yet, but we're heading there. It's like when I use that analogy of searching for a washer and dryer, it's hard to discredit that it says one price from one retailer and another from another. It's pretty factual, and you kind of feel comfortable making your decision, a matrix on that. And I think that's where business needs to go. It's not about, your uncle says, go buy a washer and dryer over here because it's the best one you can get. Now it's like a factual data structure we look at. And it's going to be the same thing where it's going to help remove the emotion out of some products and materials and say, no, in combination of a total package, this is a better package for the rules and the world we live in today. And it's going to be a factual data set that ultimately consumers can look at and feel good about what they're deciding to do. We're not there yet, obviously, but that's where I see it all headed. And right now, there's just still so much, historic knowledge and opinions and thoughts, and we need to get to a data opinion.
Excellent. As we wrap up here, Matthew, is there anything that maybe we didn't cover that you want to touch on specifications and EPR?
No, I think it's, the key is this, I just said the 7 states that have kind of got one foot going. I'm interested. I think you were at Summit, Adam, and saw Tennessee talk about kind of where they're headed, which is not in the 7, but that's a whole nother kind of view of it, which was pretty exciting. And then the other, I think it's 10 states they're looking to go. I'll have a little bit of a different twist on that. That's going to be just, if everybody's struggling with Oregon, complexity has just begun. And I think that's scary, but it's also very positive in thinking how to rethink your business and not just address it for an EPR reason. Change the way you're driving your business. Just we've seen that through history. Things have kind of pushed us to do things differently, and really the outcome was great. And so I stay positive, encouraged in this. And then we're heading to open an office over in Europe because the complexity says higher over there. And so boots on the ground to try to help companies over there. We do a lot over there, but we've really seen that as another area for a lot of complexity that companies need help with. And that's what we do, is try to simplify the complex. That was a tagline, Adam, another one. That's for you. So
that's awesome. I've heard this from a few different people and a couple of different brands where right now a lot of brands are kind of frozen in terms of making decisions because of what's happening with tariffs and what's happening with the current administration, that they're kind of bringing it up with EPR as like, we don't think this is going to fly by the end of the year. This will be like off the table because it does make it harder for businesses to do businesses, and the current administration is like wiping out, a lot of things that kind of could lead up to this, but it's what's in play now. So you can't be hopeful and be like, oh, this is not going to happen, or this is actually going to roll back. Like you gotta.
It's like saying you're not going to pay your income taxes because you think that they're going to
cut
funding to the IRS. It's like, no, you still have to pay you're still going to have to pay your EPR fees to Oregon to Colorado, as these are state level things that the federal government candidly has no jurisdiction over.
Today.
Yeah,
Right.
we don't need to get into that, but I would just say, like, if there's a brand and you're listening to this and you're thinking that's what's going to happen,
you got to get on it.
You were incorrect.
Yeah, I think California is the best example of that. And obviously, it's not the direction of the current administration's philosophies, but yeah, they said, hey, companies, you're struggling with this. We get it. You get a couple more months. Like, it's not. It will come back next year. It was doing that. I think you were seeing those year-long extensions. Now, I forget what it was, 3-4 month extension. So I think, that the urgency is picking up quickly and changing. So yeah, you can't depend on that it going away.
Excellent. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much. Thanks for joining us, Matthew. Thanks so much for hopping on here. Go check out specwright.com and get your specs right.
Great, guys. Appreciate it as always.
Thanks so much. And we're going to hang out here for